All right. After much ado and much thought, there's certain essential elements that all action films have or need or do on a certain level it could do better. So what we're going to debut tonight is the Pat Mullin Manliness Action Scale, the M.A.S., as in mass. And the way it's going to work is this has 8 categories to it. We're going to score each category of this film on a 1 to 5 point scale. We will total it. Now, in 8 categories, 5 points per category, the highest score you can achieve for this would be a 40. I don't know if we're ever going to get to a 40, but we can try. But we're going to start it off with this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. We're going to start with category 1, which is the physique of the lead actor.
Okay.
Now, we know that Tom Hardy is in phenomenal shape generally all of the time. The man has trapezius muscles for days, practices martial arts on a daily basis, is a physical fitness nut.
Yeah,
And in most
Tom
of his
Hardy,
movies,
shaped like a shaven gorilla.
in the best way possible, like a
Yeah.
positive comparison. Um, However, the only problem with this movie is you don't really get to see him show that at any point. He's basically in a snowy, wintry setting, and we don't get to see that physique like that. So, unfortunately, as great as Tom is, you can't give him a 5 for it because it's not shown in this. What
Yeah.
we're going to do is benefit of the doubt him and give him a 4 based on his history, the shape he does look in this movie in clothes, but we can't go all the way because he doesn't show us the good. So he's going to get a 4 on this.
All right. So I'm actually going to keep track of this. So in the first category of physical fitness, he's a 4 out of 5.
Yes.
Okay. I don't disagree.
Okay, cool.
He's. I will tell you this. Just so I can weigh in here. He looks very beefy, but it's hard to tell if he's muscular beefy or if he's chunky beefy.
Right, like he's
Because he's
world weary,
wearing so
broken
much.
down cop
Yeah,
beefy.
because he looks like he looks like he walked off the set of a fucking '90s grunge band. Just he's got all the flannels on and the
He's
vest
got
and the
yeah,
this and
the
that.
layers. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, well, what are you? Because like you could take that. I'll tell you what this movie needed. Since we're doing this, this is my contribution to these skills. What this movie needed to put him over the top was when he fights Timothy the Elephant. He just does one of these. And he's in there with the tank top.
I would have
Let's
even
go.
said when they get to the log cabin, his dad's log cabin, have a
Mm-hmm.
scene where he peels the layers off and checks his wounds out and stuff and maybe addresses that and bandages them or something.
Ooh, kind of like a Rambo thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. Or
Yeah.
like a Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first Terminator. Where he's in the bathroom doing the eye kind of a thing. I'm trying to
100%.
think,
Or
dude.
like a scene where they take the shirt off and you see all the scars and everything
Mm-hmm.
on them, but it's like also
Yeah.
on an impressive physique.
I'm trying to think of what movie I saw where you actually they did a close up of the guy like stitching his wound, and I don't know if it was Schwarzenegger or Stallone. I'm sure I've seen this 1,000 times, but there's always like in these movies. This is the benefit of doing the segment. There's always the scene of the muscly manly man, the glistening muscly manly man with a gaping wound, and he's got to sew himself back
The patch
together.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie needed
Yeah.
a patch up scene.
Agree 100%, especially considering he'd been shot, stabbed, etc. Yeah.
Harpooned, hit with a
Yeah.
steel chair, brass knuckles.
And unfortunately, that's why we can't give the usually completely reliable Tom Hardy in the physique category a 5. We have
Yeah.
to give it a 4.
Okay, moving on.
Number 2, love interest / love scene. Well, this gets a 0, obviously, unfortunately, because there is no hot love interest who he does a gratuitous scene with where she's topless and he's shadowed around her where you maybe see his butt, but you don't. And there's some kind of 80s rock ballad playing in the background. And, it takes about 90 seconds of the movie, but it shows that not only is he a manly man, but he's a ladies' man too. So
You're right. It's a 0 out of 5, but I have to be the modern film person, and for the audience's sake, and I'm going to take ChatGPT's note on me and not over-explain this. It's very simple. The kids don't want it, Pat. They don't hate to lose, and they don't love sex. Not in their media.
well, if we're ever going to change this world for the better, we got to get it back.
I 100% agree. It's funny. I watched another advertisement for tomorrow night's review. I watched Summer of '69, which is a raunchy teen sex comedy without any teen sex. This is the world we live in.
I mean, I go back to a movie like Rapid Fire with Brandon Lee,
Right.
and awesome, great pace, everything. He gets a love interest, and guess what? There's a pretty good montage with a love scene in it, and they're playing "Can't Find My Way" by Hardline, a late
Right.
'80s, early '90s hair band, and shit, yeah, that gets you hyped up too, because like, yeah, even though
When we
he's
meet when we meet Tom Hardy, what this movie needed when we first meet Tom Hardy, after we've introduced the gang and the kids and everything, our opening
prostitute,
scene of our hero, oh yeah, is
yeah,
he's in bed with a hooker who's ass up, face down, and he just gets up, takes some crumbled muddy, throws it on the thing, puts himself back to then we can get our gratuitous body shot of
let,
Tom Hardy.
yeah, let him do that. Take a Percocet and drink water, like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and again, she's face down, ass up. You don't even see her face, just her ass. And she kind of mumbles into the pillow, "Hey, where you going?" And he's like, "Gotta go to work, babe." And he
yeah,
trunges down the trunges, mopes
yeah. No,
down the
you're there.
shambles,
Yeah,
down the
you're there.
stairs. Yeah,
So
and that's it. Hey, baby, when am I gonna see you again? Something like that.
yeah, 100%. So unfortunately, this does not contain that. So you
Right.
have to give it a 0.
And then the love interest, the opposite leading lady is the street cop that he's partnered with, and they do the "I don't work with a partner" thing, which is fine. It gives them somewhat of dimension. And
Yeah.
this is another one of those where he isn't the star of his own movie, because this is kind of her story. This is like you said before, like he's the only one that gets a redemption arc. No. Her arc is she gets to ascend into hero. She saves the day in the end, Pat. She
She
saves the
really
day.
does. I said I
She
like the character. Unfortunately, there's no physical chemistry or anything between them, and yeah, this
Right,
is where it
right.
goes.
Yeah, he doesn't. There isn't a scene later on where like you're a pig, you're a bitch, and she like pulls her tits out.
Yeah,
Like what happened in a normal situation.
that's how I saw it. But
That's
yeah,
right.
unfortunately, that is going to go to a 0, and there's
Yeah.
nothing we can really do about that.
Moving on.
Category 3, the ne'er do well. So most of our heroes in these movies have at least 1 to 2 bad traits, if not a ton. Tom's going to score a 5 on the ne'er do well scale in this because 1, he's a dirty cop. 2, he's a deadbeat husband who's been divorced and behind on alimony payments. And 3, he's a deadbeat dad who's trying to buy dollar store goods for his child's Christmas.
That's the thing. I needed to see that. We get told that in exposition. Where's the scene of the nagging whore wife?
Well,
Where's the scene of
they have the phone conversations, and they
it?
show they show that.
It clearly wasn't memorable if I don't remember it's in the movie.
I remember it was there, and that's
Pat,
enough for
you
me.
remember what you ate for breakfast in 1982?
I wasn't alive in 1982.
Yet you remember.
I'm just saying they did include it. It's just to more paint the picture of this is not a good guy, which I'm fine
Right.
with. And again, we're talking a ne'er-do-well scale. He's clearly a 5 on the ne'er-do-well scale.
I agree with you. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with you. I haven't disagreed with any of your scores. But again, I'm looking at this as a producer, as a filmmaker, and I'm like, why not? Why not show up with the bag of stuff for the kids? And the wife's like, you're behind on, and let her be a 10 on the Adrian scale. You can't see your child. You're a bad
Well,
father,
she
and you
wouldn't be on
can't
the
bring me
Adrian scale because
dollar store trinkets, and you see the kid in the window like a puppy.
she wouldn't be on the Adrian scale because she'd be right, but
Fair.
yeah. All right. So on the ne'er-do-well scale, he gets a 5.
Okay.
Through 3 categories, we've got a score of 9 out of a
Uh-huh.
possible 15. Not bad.
Yep. Yeah, the lack of Eros really killed the score of this movie.
Yeah. Our next category, criminal element.
Mm.
This is going to get a 5 for me
Yeah.
because we are basically touching every base possible. We have the organized crime element of 2 different sets of triads in a war with each other.
They made up for lack of sex with an extra dose of violence.
We have the thieves in question who happen to, of course, be the offspring of a dirty politician.
Mm-hmm.
who now is involved with the organized crime element, who, by the way, they have dirty cops on the payroll. So everything you could want illegal happening at one time is right here. So I love that. That gets a 5 for me.
All that was missing was a masked vigilante.
Essentially, we had one without the mask, but it's fine, you know.
Well, he's kind of almost more of like a Commissioner Gordon in this thing. What this thing really lacked was that righteous hand of justice.
Yeah, but we're in a dark world where that hand does not exist.
That's right, making it much more bleaker.
Yes. So that's also going to get a 5 for me on this scale. So out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 points, we have 14, if I'm counting correctly, Mark.
You are.
That's pretty good. Our next category is hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, 5.
Now, see, unfortunately, I'm going to give a 2 here.
Oh, interesting. That you juked when you should have jived. What's going on here?
As much as I love the pitched gun battles and chase scenes and everything, I did not get enough mano a mano, hand to hand, no gun fighting in this. We got that great scene of him and the assassin, Michelle Wat, like we talked about, where she's just done kicking his ass for a good, minute and a half. And that was great. I do like what they did with the gun battles, but there's not enough of picking off one at a time and a serious throwdown for me in this. And so I have to only give it a 2 out of 5 here on this.
Here's what I'll tell you. I am willing to go along with that for the following reason. We don't have that last scene of the original Lethal Weapon where Mel Gibson hand-to-hand fights dude on the lawn.
Yeah, he done jujitsu's him on the lawn.
Right. We don't even have a Friday. I knocked you. You just got knocked the fuck out. Again, even Friday has a final fight scene.
Yeah, and that was lacking.
Yeah, Timothy Olyphant and Tom Hardy really need it. Like I said, you have Tom Hardy. After he's Dark Knighted his way through all of these people, including Michelle Wat, and there's Timothy Olyphant, trying to jump a train like a hobo, and Tom Hardy is like, "Come on, motherfucker," and Timothy Olyphant's like, "All right," and that's where he takes his shirt off and he's got the tank top, and Timothy Olyphant gets down, and we know
that Tom Hardy can do jujitsu, a motherfucker.
Right, and we have ourselves a good old fashioned train track fist fight.
Let them, knock the guns out of each other's hands, and they go onto the train track so they can't get them. And now you got to throw down mano a mano.
Right. I mean, even shaping around the fact that there's one gun between them, and they keep fighting for the gun.
Yeah,
and they're kicking it and all this other stuff.
Yeah, we didn't get that.
So that's funny. You mentioned that. Going back to the whole crisp arm, collar and elbow tie-up metaphor, this kinds of lacks that hateful passion that I think it needed in retrospect.
Yeah. So that's why I know it's probably not popular, but I have to give the hand-to-hand combat element a 2 out of 5 here. And I think I'm probably being maybe a little generous because I was so impressed with what they did with the pitched gun fights. But we need a manly action male lead at a certain point to throw down with just his bare hands and do it. And we never got that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame too, because this is probably one of the more capably believable guys in that vein. So
but I think we touched on something that, because we spent the first half of the podcast gushing about this movie, but as we're going through your scales, and I think this is the value of doing these, is it's making me look at certain elements of it that I kind of just said I kind of bypassed. And that I hate you passion that's present in, again, Lethal Weapon and some of these, even fucking First Blood Part 2.
Yeah. I was going to go to Commando when he fights the other guy.
Yeah, Commando's another good one. But when I brought up First Blood Part 2, I was thinking like there's a whole scene of them like torturing him. So when he nips up, right? When he Hogan comes back and he starts killing Russians and then takes out all of the Vietnamese men ever, as they're trying to escape from Vietnam, you're cheering him on because he's been so brutalized, and that's missing from here. We needed Timothy Olyphant to brutalize Tom Hardy so that in the end, when Tom Hardy's like, I need to get my comeuppance, I need to get my last licks, you're like, yes, this is the fight we've been waiting for.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't get that. So that would put a 2-pointer on this one. That's going to take us to 16 points out of a possible 25 as we stand right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our next category, and it's a big one, literally and figuratively, body count.
Body counts in the house. Body count.
Now, oh yeah. Now there's two ways that I basically look at body count. One is by the literal name of it, body count, how many people died here, how many people were killed. But also I look to meaningful and impactful deaths as a little bit of a cheat in that as well. We done got all that in this, so body count's getting a 5.
Mm-hmm. It's not
I
quite
don't think
Kill
there's
Bill, but it's up there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the body count in this was impressive and done well. And we
Mm-hmm.
did get meaningful deaths in this along the way. So I don't think I have any choice but to score this a 5. So as that point would stand, we are now at 21 out of a possible 30 points.
Yep. 5, 10, 15, 19, 20, 21. Yep.
Our next category, and unfortunately, this is going to be more in the love interest scene scoring than it is the body count. One-liners.
Uh, this is not a fun movie.
This is a 0 on the one-liner scale.
This is a bleak fucking movie, man.
Yeah, there's certain movies that just don't have the time, the patience, or the environment for a good one-liner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after, let's say he shoots Timothy Olyphant and Olyphant falls into a train car, and his partner Ellie may ask, what happened to him? He had to catch a train. We don't get that.
But it doesn't even have the Predator full of toxic masculinity lines. I ain't got time to bleed. And he's like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of slack-jawed faggots. A personal favorite. Dylan, you son of a bitch.
Looks sick, lost weight. Yeah.
I needed some toxic masculinity in this movie, and it's
Yeah.
lacking that.
So I don't think there's any question on that scale. Unfortunately, we have to give this a 0.
Yeah.
Which that unfortunately will bring us to a 21 out of possible 35.
Mm-hmm.
Our last piece of the scale is essentially a potpourri, if you will, that I'm just going to call the bonus round.
Okay.
Where are there elements to this that don't fit into any of those neat little boxes, but they deserve points for having them in there? And I think there are plenty. One of them being, as I mentioned before, Michelle Waterston being cast as the accountant, or not the accountant, sorry, movie on the brain, as the assassin,
Mm-hmm.
working for the Triad family. I love that they cast somebody with a real fighting background, and not only just a real fighting background, but an aesthetically pleasing fighting background that she can execute perfectly, because not only is she a martial artist, but she's also a longtime dancer. So she's able to do these movements with a believability. But like when you were talking about the body movement art of seeing that club scene go through,
Mm-hmm.
there's a believability, there's a realism, and I think that translates well to a lot of those scenes. I think the casting of Timothy Olyphant as Tom, he's not the perennial nemesis, but I love the fact that they got Timothy in here because he's a guy who fits into this movie like a hand into a glove.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in almost a Vic Mackey type role as a guy manipulating the narc squad into doing terrible things for terrible people.
It's so hilarious you said Vic Mackey, because I was actually thinking of Shane
Yeah.
from The Shield, whose name
Yeah,
escapes
Walton
me.
Goggins.
Walton Goggins, yeah, he's not as physical as you need him to be in this movie, but actually you could have gotten away with it because this movie lacks that kind of physicality.
Yeah.
So you could have used Walton Goggins and he'd have been perfect for this.
Yeah. I think incorporating scenes of the gun battles were done really well. Again, a personal standout favorite for me is Ellie and that other assassin in the hospital when they get to that part. I love that when she apprehends him. I love the idea of the Triad family feud that they put into it.
Yeah.
Where this whole thing is based around the succession. And not only that, but they were able to incorporate a powerful politician by using his kid as the thief and courier for this deal.
Mm-hmm.
So on the bonus point scale for those elements they incorporated, I got to give it a 5. I really enjoyed the things they put in to kind of get the audience more into it and add little winks and nods to people who know who people are in this. So I'm giving it a 5 on the bonus points, which brings it up to where are we at now, Mark? 26 points?
I believe so. 5, 10, 15, 26. Yes.
So we have a 26 out of 40 score for Havoc, which I think is a pretty darn good score, all things considered. Um,
Let me throw a scale at you. If John Wick is the high watermark, John Wick is a 10. In the gun fu lone man fights an army of villains and pitch gun battles and hand to hand combat. And I don't even know what a 1 would be. But if John Wick is a 10, where does this rank for you?
if John Wick's a 10, I'll give this an 8.
Okay.
I think the big thing setting John Wick apart is you get a lot more of the hand-to-hand, one-on-one, hateful stuff we talked about,
You
particularly in the
also get to know John as a person, and
well,
when
yeah,
he gets the Job treatment, you understand why he becomes the devil.
yeah, and I was gonna say it's really more standouts for me in the first and fourth installments of that series than anything
Hmm.
else. Um,
I love the fourth one. It was one of in my top 10 movies of that year. But I mean, I leaned over to my date, whom I took to that movie, and I said, "We're kind of watching a video game we can't play, right?" And she said, "That's how I feel."
yeah, but I enjoy certain elements of that more than the
Hmm.
second and third installments. I would say if you're including this and ranking this among the 4 John Wick movies, I'd
Hmm.
put it behind 1 and 4 and ahead of 2 and 3.
That's fair. Okay. Anything else before we close out for the night?
It's a fun entry to introduce the M.A.S.S scale.
Yeah,
Um,
I told my son to watch it. There's nothing in this movie that he hasn't seen before. There's because of the distinct lack of tits, which I don't really want him to watch, or at least he would watch not with me around.
well, how old
I
is he
was
now?
He's 11. He'll be going into the 6th grade.
It's about that time.
Okay, again, I don't want to watch with my son. I'm not at that point yet. However, what he watches on his own is his own issue. However, I told him my point is, besides my parenting, is he asked me. He actually texted me this week. He's with his mother this weekend, and he was like, "Can you give me some movies to watch that are streaming right now?" And I said, "Yeah, Nanas and Havoc." And I told him, like, watch Havoc. This is an unadulterated, fantastic action movie. It is the most modern example of movies for guys who like movies.
And that's primarily why we chose this for this exercise, I guess you'd call it.